The party is brilliant. 5 specialists, a rogue who can find any weakness, a wizard who sees everything in the network, a paladin who knows every regulation, an artificer who builds every defense. And somehow, they're losing. Not to the enemy, to each other. The rogue and the paladin disagree on whether to disclose a finding to regulators. The wizard is drowning in alerts that the artificer's rules generate. The artificer is building something the business changed direction on 2 months ago. Everyone is working. Nobody is working together. This is what a party looks like without a cleric. Welcome back. I'm the architect. We've met the rogue, the wizard, the paladin, and the artificer. Today we meet the class that makes all of them more effective. The security manager, the cleric, the coordinator, the translator, the one who keeps the party alive and pointed in the same direction. The cleric is not the most technical person in the party. That's a feature, not a flaw. The most technical person in the party needs to be technical. They need to be deep in the problem, in the logs, in the code, in the architecture. The cleric needs to be across the problem, seeing how the pieces connect, where the handoffs break down, where the priority conflicts are, where the team needs resources that it doesn't have. Coordination is the cleric's primary weapon. The rogue finds a critical vulnerability. The cleric decides whether to patch it this week or escalate it above the security team's authority. The wizard identifies a sophisticated intrusion in progress. The cleric activates the response process, notifies legal, notifies leadership, coordinates the investigation. The paladin says the compliance deadline is in 30 days and the team isn't ready. The cleric figures out what has to give, what gets prioritized, and who needs to know. None of this is technical. All of it is essential. The cleric sits at the boundary between the security team and the business. And that boundary is where most security programs fail. Not because the technical work is bad, because the technical work can't be funded, prioritized, or supported by people who don't understand why it matters. The executive leadership of most organizations is not technical. They understand risk in terms of business impact, revenue lost, reputation damaged, operations disrupted, legal exposure created. The security team communicates in CVSSs and IOCs and TTPs. The cleric translates. We have a critical vulnerability in our payment processing system that is actively being exploited in the wild. If we don't patch it this week, we are a known target for the ransomware group that hit 3 competitors last month. That is a sentence the CFO can act on. We have a 9.8 CVSS unauthenticated RCE in our PCI cardholder data environment, is a sentence the CFO will nod at and then ask someone else to explain. The cleric knows how to say both, and knows when to use which. Here's the failure mode that catches new clerics off guard. Most of them were promoted because they were the best rogue in the room, or the sharpest wizard, or the artificer whose builds never broke. And the instinct that made them great at that job doesn't switch off just because the title changed. A critical finding comes in. The old instinct says, I know exactly how to fix this. Let me just do it. But every hour the cleric spends personally fixing one problem is an hour they're not coordinating the 4 other people who could each be fixing a different problem at the same time. A cleric who can't stop swinging the sword is a cleric who is quietly failing at the only job that's actually theirs. The cleric's power was never the spell they personally cast. It was making sure the right person cast the right spell at the right time with everyone else already clear of the blast radius. That's a harder discipline than it sounds. Letting go of the work you're best at so the work you're now responsible for actually gets done. A word on what the cleric carries. Every class in the party has a defined domain, a specific kind of problem that is theirs. The cleric's domain is everything that falls in between the other domains. The jurisdiction questions, the budget fights, the personnel issues, the vendor relationships, the board presentations, the regulatory inquiries, the press call when something goes wrong, the 3 a.m. phone call when the wizard sees something that might be an active breach. I've been in this role. Not because I plan to be. Because at some point in a security career, if you stay long enough and develop enough perspective, you become the person the technical team needs to translate for them, and the business needs to understand them. It's not a glamorous position. It is an important one. Because a security program that can't communicate its value gets defunded. And a defunded security program is a castle with theoretical walls. The core lesson. The best security teams don't just have good specialists. They have a cleric who makes the specialists stronger by keeping them coordinated, by securing the resources they need, by translating their work into language that earns organizational support, and by being the one class in the party who understands every other class well enough to know that they need help when they need to be redirected and when they need to be protected from leadership that doesn't understand what they're doing. The cleric heals the party, not with magic, with clarity, coordination, and the willingness to stand between the specialists and the forces that would otherwise consume them. Your quest objective. Think about the last time a good idea failed to get traction at your organization. Not because it was a bad idea, but because the person proposing it couldn't get the right people to understand why it mattered. The gap between the idea and the decision maker who could fund it is the gap the cleric exists to close. If you're early in your career, practice translating technical problems into business impact. Pick one security issue that you understand thoroughly technically. Write one paragraph explaining why a non-technical executive should care. If you're in a leadership role, find out if your security team has someone doing this translation. If not, find out why. We have the full party: rogue, wizard, paladin, artificer, cleric. 5 classes, 10 domains between them. But every one of these classes answers to someone. Or in some smaller kingdoms, the cleric is that someone, wearing a second hat nobody quite gave them a title for. Next time, we go up one level. The Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, and the very different ways a kingdom can structure its entire chain of security command. I'm the architect. We'll talk soon.